You're watching Car Babble. I'm Ewan, and this is the Mini Cooper S Electric, and it's in the level 3 spec, which is the best one. Now, I've got quite a lot to say about this car, so I'm going to break it into 2 videos. In this part 1, we're going to talk about the interior, the space, the tech, all that kind of stuff. And then part 2, I'm going to take it out on the road and discuss the driving dynamics, performance, and the range. So if that sounds interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, buckle up and let's get into it. So a lot of car manufacturers, when they make electrified versions of their cars, they make them look really futuristic and wacky. I'm really glad to say that Mini didn't do that. They were like, no, we want this to still feel like a Mini, and therefore the changes are very subtle. You really can't tell without a keen eye or really knowing your Minis the differences. There's a badge on the back that's yellow that says this is an EV, and there's a slightly different grille, but it still has a grille, so it doesn't look like a totally EV future kind of looking car. You still got the same old front lights, which look ace, and in this top spec you get matrix LED, which is great, and then the rear tail lights have the Union Jack flag on them. So that's awesome, although there is something about this car that doesn't feel very British designed, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, the lights look great, everything feels familiar as a Mini, and I love that. Now, if you're buying a Mini, you're probably not someone who's carting a very large family about and a lot of luggage. I worked that one out all by myself. But nevertheless, the boot is pretty small in this car, but because it's a Mini, if it was any bigger, it just wouldn't be a Mini then, would it? So it is what it is. But even the top level 3 spec, you've still got a manual tailgate, let's just note that. And yes, there's a lot of dog hair in here because I just couldn't get it out when I cleaned the car. But it is a small boot, 211 litres with the seats up. And there is a parcel shelf that goes in here, but it's a very small one, and the owner's taken it out because it's obviously fairly useless and probably lost it. So I don't have that to show you. But you do have underfloor storage, and you can put the cables in there. It's quite a useful space actually. So that's good, because if you had the cables sitting there, then the boot would be very, very small. But realistically, you're only going to be putting your Tesco shop or a couple of weekend bags in here at best. That's all it's really for. You've got a few tethering points and tie down points and a 12 volt, but it's such a small boot, you're not really going to need to tie stuff down much. And if you want to put the seats down, 60/40, you do that manually, and you've got 731 litres and a massive ridge there. And so if you're sliding stuff in, it's going to be quite hard to get over that. But yeah, it's not a car for taking trips to IKEA. It's just not. So I'm okay with that. So in the Cooper Electric, you do not get a 5-door, only a 3-door. So you're always going to have to go in through the front doors to get in. And once you do get in, if you're an adult, that's going to require quite a lot of work. This was very difficult for me to sit behind myself to do this test. Seats in my driving position, I'm 5'9", and I'm obviously not the tallest driver, and that is where I have my seat, and that's how much knee room there is. In the middle of the seat, there's a bit more, but you still have to, get in the middle of the seat. There's a bit of a recess there, but wow, that is not a lot of space for legs at all, underneath as well. Headroom isn't amazing, but it does have the pan roof, so without that, it might be slightly better. So that's not terrible, but it's not great. And then it's not a very wide car as you'd expect with a Mini, so you can only get 2 people back here. These back seats are super comfy, but I just can't see there being anybody tall enough to actually be able to sit back here to get the benefit of them. You might be able to get car seats in here, certainly not rear-facing ones, I wouldn't think, but that's probably the sort of size of child that's going to sit back here. So yeah, they're not going to be on the actual seat. But the Isofix are easy to get to. They've got little clips to get up, and that's good. And yeah, you've got door bins, or say cup holders for door bins, and they're very shallow and plasticky. The one in the middle as well, that one's got a rubber mat on it, but they don't, which is a shame. But that's really it for practicality back here. The windows don't go down at all, obviously, but they're reasonable size. And you've got a little elbow rest, which is really hard. And I do really like these Harman Kardon speakers in the top spec. They look really cool. That's about it. I said, obviously, I love the fact that the exterior of the Mini looks like every other Mini for years. And I love the fact that the interior is the same. This design kind of language in here has been like this for a long time in Minis, and they've brought it over to the electric one, and it looks fantastic. But let's talk about quality, because it's mostly good. There's a few bits of trim that rattle a little bit and don't feel particularly solidly built, especially in the back there in the cup holder. But up front, all the soft points, they're soft, although you don't touch up there, but these elbow points are really soft, that's good. The steering wheel feels nice in the hand. It's not very soft, but it's a nice feeling quality steering wheel. The buttons on the steering wheel are piano black and plasticky, a bit like on a Volvo actually, I don't really like those. And the buttons and the switch gear in the middle here feel pretty high quality. Door close, solid, big, long, heavy door, frameless window as well. But yeah, that feels solid. Indicators, yeah, high quality as well. Generally, the quality in here, keep saying that word, is really good, but there are a few little bits where you're like, oh yeah, there's a few cheap corners being cut as well. But the seats, they are really comfortable, really, really good. Soft leather, really comfy, hold you in nicely. I'll feel that when I'm out driving it. Thigh extensions, still manual in the top spec, and lumbar support is manual as well, but whatever, as long as it's got lumbar support, that's the main thing. But these are really, really comfortable seats, and yeah, they feel high quality. So there is parts of this car that just say to me, you know, expense has not been spared for the most part, and then there's other bits where I'm just like, oh yeah, that little bit of trim there looks like it's, you know, been thrown together a bit too quickly. But the storage is a bit of a mixed bag. You've got this center armrest that you can put your phone in here to charge if it's wide enough, and that's okay. And you can lift this up and ratchet it down. Love that, because it means I can put it in the right position for my elbow to touch the steering wheel and rest, and it just supports you and helps you rest when you're driving. Love that. But yeah, if you lift it up, there's a little bit under here you could put something, but it's not very like rubbery or anything, so things will slide about there. You've got a cubby at the front here, which is where I put the keys. That's not got a rubber mat on it either. And two cup holders, which have got rubber mats, but they're not massively deep and they're not adaptable. So this bottle fits perfectly, but others might not. And that bottle actually then obscures some of the buttons in the air conditioning and other buttons above it as well. So that's not ideal. The glove box is a good size, but the door bins are absolute mints. They are, yeah, basically for like business cards or something, or maybe a set of sunglasses. You're not getting much in there at all. I don't really know what they were thinking there. They could have actually made them come into the cabin more and make them more useful. So that for me is just feels like a cheap out thing really there. That's just an unnecessarily small cubby down there. But that's pretty much it on Cubbies. Now, infotainment in this car is pretty good, mainly because they've covered all bases like in a BMW, and I love that. You've got this massive retro dial round outside of this touchscreen, and it's a responsive touchscreen. It's all right, but the buttons are quite small on it, so I don't think that'd be great to use in the move. Some of them are a bit bigger, but it's not massively intuitively laid out like in a BMW, but it doesn't really matter. You've got voice control as well, and you've also got your rotary dial and shortcut buttons down here. So yeah, very much like a BMW interface, and I love that. So you've got the choice of how to use this the way you want. Few buttons below it as well, just to give you some shortcuts. So that's cool. And yeah, it's not laggy, and it's got nice colors. I think it's overall pretty decent. Then below that, you've got retro, old school dials for your AC controls and heating. That's cool. Heated seats. And then below that, you've got a few more buttons and switches, but they're more like, you know, the ones you would launch a rocket with, and that's just very mini and just looks very retro, and I love that. So they've got all the right amount of buttons for the things you need buttons for, and different ways to control the infotainment system, and that's what I want to see. Then there's the digital cockpit, which is not very customizable, but all the information you need is there. Warning messages, digital speedo, energy, etc. So that's fine. And then you've got head-up display as well. So you've got all the options, although the difference in height of the two isn't much, so I don't really think you really need the head-up display. And the head-up display is a pop-up one, which is a slightly cheaper solution than one projecting on the windscreen, but it does the job if you really want to have that. And that's something you get only with the level 3 spec. But what I really love about the steering wheel is when you ratchet it up and down, the cockpit goes with it, so you never obscure the top of the dials with your steering wheel. Really like that solution. Overall, I think they've got the retroness versus the techiness absolutely spot on in this car. But something that really bothers me is that this infotainment system, again, is facing away from the driver, and I'm amazed, particularly with this Mini being, you know, British, so to speak, and that, you know, there's British flags in the lights on the back, that you're made to feel like they cheaped out for the British market that much, but that is facing away from the driver. And I've said this in other videos, that bothers me a lot, because not only is it naughty driver centric display, which it should be in any car for me, or at least like neutral if anything, but it's a fun, engaging car. I want this to face me, so that's annoying, but it tells me that they cheaped out for the right-hand drive market, because the likelihood is when they moved the steering wheel over here, they didn't bother to redesign this for our market. And so yeah, we're treated like second-class citizens, and that really sucks. So when this 2021 facelift came out, you got 3 specs, level 1, 2 and 3. I'll put some info in the comments about those, but let's talk about this level 3 spec, because I like toys in my car, so I'm always going to say, if you can afford it, go for the top spec, because with this one, you're getting this awesome looking Harman Kardon sound system, which based on the speakers alone looks like it's worth having. panoramic roof, these leather seats are amazing, you get a heated steering wheel as well, and a head-up display, so you've got lots of cool stuff there. The only thing you really want to probably add on to that as an option would be adaptive cruise. So look for one if you're buying this used, obviously, that has that, because it's not an expensive option, so I think a lot of people will probably tick that box. But then you've really got just about everything you could want in terms of luxuries in this car. One thing this car doesn't have that really annoys me is Android Auto. You might be able to get it in the newer models, but in this 2021, you couldn't get it, and you could get Apple CarPlay. So if you had an Apple phone, you were not treated like a second-class citizen. So yeah, if you don't like the infotainment system, you could circumvent it by plugging in your phone to the car. But yeah, no Android Auto. Now let's talk about competitors, because there's a lot of them. You've got the Fiat 500 electric, the Nissan Leaf, the Orca Funky Cat, the Honda E, the Peugeot E2008. You could go on and on, Renault Zoe. There's loads of them. And yeah, the list is going to keep getting bigger as the price of them comes down and more mainstream car brands are bringing out EVs. But this one feels, compared to some of them, just knowing those other brands, that this is almost on premium car territory in some areas, like for example, the seats and the steering wheel. There's just things about this car that feel more premium than you'll get in a lot of those. But then those ones might have better practicality in the back or in the boot, and in some cases better range. So yeah, you really need to check them all out and compare the stats so you know whether this one stacks up for what you need versus them. But if you want to get a new one of these, you're looking at about 34.5 grand for the level 3 spec and 32.5 for the level 2. They did actually get rid of the level 1, I think. But if you go back the way and you were to buy a used one, you know, a couple of years old, you might get one for sort of mid-20s. And yeah, I think that seems like reasonably good value. I suspect some of its rivals might depreciate quicker than this. And so yeah, you might find better bargains as a used car, but as a new car, they're all roughly around about this price bracket. But really, the quality of some of the stuff in this car is probably better. So guys, I hope you found that video useful and enjoyable. And if you did, please do give me a like and drop me a comment below with your thoughts on it and your experiences of driving a Mini. And also subscribe, because obviously part 2 is coming up about this car and loads of other stuff as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.